I think it's fairly reasonable to say video gaming as a whole has gotten more expensive in recent years. Playing a game used to be a singular purchase for $50, $60, or even $20. But now, even with the $70 increase, it has also turned it into a potentially $100 endeavor. Despite many of these games being free to download, they urge you to spend. They flash in-game currencies and beautiful cosmetic skins at you faster than you can comprehend, and it works. Sometimes. One of the most prevalent free-to-play game genres right now that can end up costing hundreds are gacha games. What used to be a niche genre of games featuring PNGs of anime waifus set in a simple turn-based system, these games have evolved into full-blown mirrors of huge hits like the exploration-heavy The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or the tactical and flashy Persona 5. I myself play gacha games quite a bit. I started with Genshin back in 2020 and started Honkai in 2023, mainly because of Gallagher. I mean, he's really just wow. I wanted to take a closer look at Honkai Star Rail, however, because despite me playing it for 3 less years, I have probably spent more money on it. I'm probably not the only one in this boat too. Honkai is a gacha game that lands consistently in the top 10 or even 5 of the highest grossing mobile games. While it uses a standard gacha formula of rotating banners and limited time characters, Hoyoverse has found a very specific way to max out their sales. So let's see how. Like other gacha games, Honkai Star Rail primarily relies on FOMO as a business model. FOMO, aka fear of missing out, according to scholars Andy Hakim and Hamid Salim Farid, is when individuals experience anxiety over the possibility of missing an exclusive opportunity and can lead to impulsive buying behavior. The most basic form this FOMO model can be seen in Honkai is the fact that the banners are time limited. Now, this isn't exactly unique to Honkai, but other aspects about the game lead to an increase of impulsive buying behavior out of fear and anxiety. To start, let's look at the rhythm Honkai releases team archetypes. Let's start with the Herta's team, a queen of AoE DPS and probably the best DPS character right now. The Herta was released on January 15, 2025, and she lacked a premium team of characters that fully synergized with her. It's worth noting that premium in this case refers to 5-star only, and perfectly synergized means the character is tailor-made for the Herta. For instance, 4-star Herta is not bad with the Herta, but in single target scenarios and with 3 and under enemies, she's not the greatest. It is also worth noting that during Herta's first banner, Lingsha and Jade were running right alongside her, both of them being considered her best teammates at the time. Ideally, the release of her best-in-slot teammates should be spaced out enough to give you time to save your Jades. I think a good example of proper banner basing is between Acheron and her best support, Zhao Shou, a whole 3 versions apart during their first banners, which equates to about 4.5 months. But Honkai rarely gives you this luxury of time anymore. Tribi, the Herta's best support, was released on February 26, 2025, only 21 days after the last day of the Herta's banner. And while the Herta herself is fairly free-to-play friendly, with a kit not Eidolon or Lyco dependent, Tribi, and especially E1 Tribi, is a huge boost for her damage, and a significant upgrade compared to her other supports. Additionally, if a player had missed out on the Herta's Erudition sub-DPS, Jade, they would ideally summon for Anaxa, who's coming out on April 30th, which in of itself isn't a terrible thing. I think it's a fairly long window of time for players to save up, but enough to guarantee him and maybe his Lycone if they summon for Tribi E1. I personally don't think it's enough time. Teams in Honkai are largely dependent on you having all elements to make it work. While there are suitable 4-star alternatives, they come rarely and are hardly effective. Many teams in Honkai Star Rail simply don't function without certain characters. The Break archetype, for instance, is reliant on Ron Mei, Follow-up relies on Robin, and so on. I think a pretty offensive example of this manipulation of time is when Firefly was released right alongside Ranmei. Firefly, without a doubt, is pretty reliant on Ranmei's buff. She isn't unusable, but you could definitely feel a significant drop in performance and comfort. Another pretty good example of this are the banners released in version 2.5, which featured Robin, Fei Xiao, Kafka, and Black Swan all rerunning at the same time. Kafka without Black Swan and Black Swan without Kafka is like an Oreo without cream. Kafka cookies are pretty good, but she's missing her other half. And this is all purposeful, of course. By Hoyoverse stringing these characters dependent on each other so close together, the presence of a ticking clock reinforces the idea that hesitation leads to loss, prompting consumers to prioritize speed over rational decision-making. Loss in this case referring to having an incomplete team and the dissatisfaction that comes along with it, and rational decision-making being not swiping, simply because it's not a necessity. This banner was also released during a time when Fei Xiao was easily able to clear Maok, further incentivizing you to pull for her, especially if you were struggling with clearing at the time. And of course, the endgame modes themselves are FOMO. While the rewards aren't super substantive, it does feel pretty terrible if you're not able to clear within the time allotted. Because you need every little jade you can scrap up for a new character, the game creates a sense of perceived urgency rather than necessity. And even with Acheron and Jiaoshu having had a reasonable gap during their first runs, in version 3.2, they are both running at the same time, alongside what many consider to be the game's biggest star right now, Casterus. Speaking of Casterus, let's look at how the animation quality for certain characters leads to further FOMO. I've decided to compare Acheron and Casterus, since they both transformed the battlefield and were released exactly 1 year apart from each other.
ひどい雨になりそうだ。その瞬間、朝露と消え失せる涙雨。降りて溢れる渡り川。
Be careful. There's something unsettling ahead. Embrace new life, Pollux. Please cherish the time before your soul. Dead souls, return to dust! I only wish that death may protect us.
Yeah, crazy difference. Casterus is currently the only character in the entire game with a special battle entrance screen, and her spectacle blows most other characters out of the water. And while they both do transform the battlefield, Acheron's only lasts until the end of her ultimate, while Casterus persists during the duration of the dragon being summoned. And of course, I had to mention Casterus's Global Revive, a account-wide mechanic that basically just revives any dead party member, regardless if she's in your team or not. No other character right now has a global buff, so this is a huge contributor to the FOMO that Casterus facilitates. But what is the point of all this? Well, despite me knowing how Honkai facilitates FOMO, it still works on me. I literally pulled Casterus. I don't spend an astronomical amount of money on Honkai, but $20 to $25 a month for a free-to-play game is a bit much. The random nature of summoning and its similarities to loot boxes and other forms of gambling can lead to extremely harmful practices for some. Scholar Daniel L. King and Paul H. Del Fabro asserts that predatory monetization schemes typically involve in-game purchasing systems that disguise or withhold the true long-term cost of the activity until players are already financially and psychologically committed. This psychological commitment and entrapment are why me and other players may find it so difficult to quit, even if the game is harming our wallets. With the increasingly flashier and more overpowered characters coming out with personalities we love, spending more and more money on loot boxes may have a sunk cost effect that serves to justify continued expenditure. While I do love the game, I am overly cautious of how Hoyoverse continues to utilize greedy business practices. But at the end of the day, if the endgame modes become impossible to clear with only old characters, at least I'll still have Gallagher.